Howdy, my name is Mackenzie from SideGame LLC in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I'm here today to talk to you about the top 10 expansions from 2020. Before we start, I have a quick honorable mention. The expansion itself is not really an expansion, it's more of a promo, and this is the event deck from Margraves of Valeria. Had a lot of fun with Margraves of Valeria, and the event deck adds some new cards that go in the market row. And as you play the game, the market will fill up with cards, and when a new event is revealed, it changes the way the game plays. So it's a small promo pack, not a full-fledged expansion, but I thought it was worth mentioning on this list because it does add some very cool variety to the game, and it honestly just makes it a better package altogether. So recommend the event deck from Margraves of Valeria. You can find that on the Daily Magic Games website. And let's go ahead and start with the list. Number 10 is going to be Role Player. Fiends and Familiar in particular, the new expansion from this year. Fiends and Familiar changes up the formula for the dice drafting of the game, where instead of getting one dice in the first couple rounds, you're going to be drafting 2 dice. It speeds up the game a little bit, but you have more spaces to place the dice. These new spaces are familiars, so they are these small little boards that you place on the top of your area, and in the board you're trying to put small numbers, so it actually adds some value to the lower level dice, which is great because normally if you got low level dice, you really didn't have much to do with them unless you were able to flip them with that top row action. So this is really nice. It allows you to weigh some different options, and sometimes it's a good thing to take those small numbers. It also introduces fiends, which add a cool restriction and makes the game a little bit more challenging. So it's really fun to pick up a bunch of fiends and see how you can do with all of these negatives on you. But you can also get rid of them in interesting ways too, and it adds some more value to the charisma tokens as aside from the -1 modifier. So Fiends and Familiars is a great expansion for Role Player and a perfect finisher here. Number 9 is the Upstairs Downstairs expansion for Obsession. This is a Downtown Abbey-esque where you're in Derbyshire and you are trying to get as much influence and reputation as you can while hopefully gaining the adoration and the attention of the Fairchild children. And hopefully you can snag one of their children to marry into your family and increase your clout. The Upstairs Downstairs adds some new guests, so you're running a staff of employees, and it adds some new ones of those as well. So new guests, new cards for those, new employees, new meeples for those, new rules, new goals, new boards, new modes. Fantastic, just a lot of stuff, and it really completes this game, I feel. Without this stuff, it makes some of the goals very hard to achieve. Some of the goals, you're trying to find specific tiles in the bag, so they add some characters to help with that, which is really nice because those are worth a lot of points. So it cuts out some of the luck from the game, but the game is still very lucky, but it adds some really cool things to help mitigate that luck. You have workers that you can use in order to mitigate your draws. You can draw multiple cards and keep one, which is nice, instead of just getting some negative point cards. I do recommend this. I think it's a great game, and I think the expansion is very welcome. A little hard to determine what the different abilities of the workers are because they have so many effects, but the fact they have so many effects is really cool because you can use them for all sorts of things. So that's my number 9, Upstairs Downstairs for Obsession. My number 8, I don't have the box. Generally, I do throw my expansion boxes away unless I'm using them to fit other things in, or if they are nice to kind of give the box a lid lift. But number 8 is going to be Hostage Negotiator Career and the new Abduction Pack. So I kind of lump these together. Hostage Negotiator released their career mode, which links all of the scenarios. It puts you in the role of a hostage negotiator, but in this case, you have your scenarios that you go back to back, and you have a pool of hostages that you carry throughout. And at the end of the campaign, you will have one final mission, and the amount of hostages you've saved will really reflect and give you bonuses in that final mission. So it's very important to do well throughout, but if you don't do so hot, that's okay. You can definitely come back from that. But ultimately, you're trying to do the best you can on this police force and, be the best hostage negotiator you can. The new abductor packs are also really fantastic. They introduce a new social media star. It's number 9, Misha Koskin. Misha Koskinen. So really interesting. She's a social media star, and she's kind of driven by her fans, and you get to see her react with them and kind of freak out for her safety. It's really fascinating to see how this all works and how they are able to take these new ideas and place them into the hostage negotiator system. So if you're a fan of solo games, this is a great solo game, and the expansion really brings the whole thing together. You need the Crime Wave box in order to play it, but you also, the more of the abductor packs you have, the better your experience is going to be, because it does add all the content that you have. So if you have all of the stuff already, or you just like Negotiator, I would recommend the career expansion. Number 7 is going to be Root, the Underworld expansion. So Root is a game of woodland warfare. You're a bunch of little critters, and you're going to be vying for control of the woods. So for Root in particular, this expansion, the Underworld, this expansion introduces moles and crows, in addition to a new map. So it's a double-sided map, which is pretty awesome. So not only does it give you a new area to play in, it gives you 2 really cool factions, and it also helps out with lower player count games. So if you're playing something with a small count, you can get rid of factions that might not be so good in those and go for some very war-heavy factions. So a lot of the good games that we've had have been like the Marquise de Cat, the Irie, and the Moles, because they all have their own masses of forces and they move in interesting ways, and it's really a great expansion if you're getting for the factions in particular. A couple of other things that came out for Root this year were the new deck of cards. I strongly recommend that. I think that's really cool to just have an entire new deck of cards that you can play with. It really adds to the variety of the game, and if you're playing Root, you're probably playing a lot of it, so this is a no-brainer expansion in my opinion, and they did a really good job with the 2 new factions. So that's my number 7, Root, the Underworld expansion. For number 6, once again, I don't have the boxes. I normally do throw them out. So number 6 is Arkham Horror, particularly the Barkham Horror expansion and the Investigator starter decks. So I have with me the Return to the Forgotten Age, which is also an incredible new addition. It fixes up some of the rules in the Forgotten Age exploration, and it makes it a more enjoyable experience, which is much needed. Anybody that plays Arkham Horror knows that the Forgotten Age is one of the most brutal campaigns you can play. So the other 2, the Investigator starter decks, they were amazing. They are just player cards after player cards, which open up all of these deck building options. If you are an Arkham Horror fan, get it. If you're thinking about it, I would suggest getting one. It's very straightforward. It really guides you into the game. It offers you an upgrade path to go through. I think it is a fantastic product, and I hope that Fantasy Flight creates more of these. The last thing is the Barkham Horror expansion. It is a one-shot scenario. You build a deck, but man, it's super fun. You are in this world where everyday humans are these dogs, and you are fighting against cats. And it's great. If you like animal-themed things, go for it. It's really fun. It takes the cool aspects and gameplay from Arkham Horror, the card game, and it puts it into this fun, goofy scenario. So I strongly recommend those 2 out of anything, the Investigator starter decks and Barkham Horror. My number 5 is Project Elite expansions. Now I'm going to lump in 2 here specifically. The Deathmaw Valley expansion, which is the Sandworm, and the Rook team. So the Rook team is the gigantic mech suits. So in Project Elite, you are fighting, it's a cooperative game where you're fighting these giant aliens coming down from space, and you are trying to complete a mission. These 2 expansions, Deathmaw Valley adds a giant sandworm that is involved in these missions. You can also use the sandworm in other games, and he just comes out as this insane boss that you have to defeat. So that's fantastic. The maps are also great in that expansion. The other expansion is the Rook team, which gives you power suits. So instead of using a normal character board, you get this power suit. You're not allowed to get any items, which is kind of a double-edged sword because you don't get to use all the cool items, but your teammates do. And I think that's kind of cool because not everybody has to wear the Rook suit. So if you have somebody that wants to use the items, go for it. They can use it. But the Rook suit adds an additional difficulty level. It adds new cards into the deck that are like super swarm cards. So it adds a bunch of new aliens that will be spawning, but it gives you power in return. You get this special die that can activate like a special ability for your suit. And your suit in general is just super strong. You have weapons built into it, so you don't actually have to find weapons, and you just go off. You feel like this beast, this champion, this savior of the people as you are going around cutting down aliens. it is such a wonderful feeling, and man, it makes the game super, super fun. And it's totally optional. You can use it, you can ask somebody if they want to use it, you can even give it to a new player if they want to feel a little bit more powerful, and you just take a normal one. You're balancing out the difficulty a little bit there. And it's just a fantastic expansion. I recommend both of those, Deathmaw Valley and Rook Team. My number 4 is Architects of the West Kingdom, The Age of Artisans. So this expansion is pretty straightforward. Architects is a worker placement game where you are putting your characters on the board to build the cathedral or buildings, and the more workers you have at a place, the more things you accumulate at that place. And if that gets too out of hand, you can actually put workers out to arrest those characters and get them off of the spaces. So it's up to the players to kind of decide how the game, how the game's managed and how insane the resource collection is. Now, with this being said, the expansion here adds very cool new ways to beef up the buildings and the assistants. So I really love, it comes with these two-sided cards. I guess they got two pieces. So on the top, it's a red band. On the bottom, it's a yellow band. And it's the other way around. But what you do is you can give up a worker permanently to take these, and you'll slide them under your already built buildings, or you'll slide them under your already hired apprentices, and it adds additional bonuses to those things. So it is really neat. It encourages you to kind of take a little bit more time to upgrade the things you already have. It encourages the use of money, so you can actually get more money in the game and actually use it on other things, as opposed to just the King's Storehouse or arresting people or getting rid of debts. So it adds a lot more decisions to that, and it's just really fun getting these cool one-time abilities or attaching a effect to a assistant and making it a priority to keep using that assistant. I found it a lot of fun, and this game is incredible as it is, and so this expansion has elevated it for me just that much more. This is my favorite out of the West Kingdom series, and this expansion has definitely sealed it as the top. I am curious to see what the Paladins expansion that's been announced is going to do for that game, and hopefully it does something very similar where it just adds to the decision space. So very impressed with Age of Artisans. My number 2, oh sorry, this is number 3. My number 3 is Spirit Island Jagged Earth. So this is a cooperative, very heavy game, very thinky, very combo-oriented. You have this spirit that you're controlling, and it's anti-colonialism. Instead of settling an island, you're preventing colonists from coming to your island. Jagged Earth adds new terrain types, new map tiles, and a bunch of new spirits and cards and events. This box is just variety. Variety and very fascinating and interesting factions. I would choose this expansion over Branch and Claw if I could, but a lot of the Branch and Claw stuff is needed for this expansion, so I guess you have to just get everything, but that's fine. I'd strongly recommend this if you like Spirit Island. The spirits are all really interesting. Some of the new spirits allow you to be very customized. You can very well customize all of the spirits that you are using, and that is a really interesting idea. Because normally you pick a spirit based on its traits, like is it good at offense, is it good at defense? Some of these spirits have just question marks for everything, so that's really cool that you can build a spirit to meet the needs of the island. This has been a huge winner. I can't recommend this one enough. This is Spirit Island Jagged Earth. Fantastic. Number 2 for me is a huge surprise. This is Wingspan, the Oceania expansion. So I was not a huge fan of Wingspan. It was a good game. I like Wingspan. However, I had a big problem with it, particularly the eggs. Usually, whenever I played that game, I would generally just lay eggs for the last 5 turns. So the entire last round generally was, I'm going to lay eggs. I'm going to lay eggs, and it's really boring because everybody else is not laying eggs, and generally they'd probably lose if they weren't laying eggs in that last round. If you were able to get things into that yellow row and lay eggs there, you're probably going to win. It was kind of unfortunate because it really cut a lot of the decision space in this game. However, the Wingspan Oceania expansion adds a new resource, Nectar, and it changes the boards. So the boards are completely different now. Not drastically different, but they are completely different. They have new ways for you to get rid of cards in the middle. They have new ways for you to generate eggs. They have new ways for you to take additional resources when you get food. They also provide cards with endgame scoring opportunities, which is really fantastic. And the perishable resource, the Nectar in this game, when you spend it in a specific row, you are able to stack it on the left side of that row. Whoever spent the most nectar in that row is able to get additional points at the end of the game. This is really cool as it encourages you to take additional paths. The last couple times I've played this game, I have not laid eggs at all in that last round because I didn't need to. I was busy doing other things. I had other avenues for scoring. It is just a fantastic expansion. It opens up the game. It allows you to do things that normally you just couldn't because it wasn't, it wasn't worth your time. It wasn't as efficient as laying eggs was. But now there are so many more so many more paths and so many more ways to enjoy this game. So this honestly has increased my opinion on Wingspan greatly. It's a game that I actually asked to play for, and wow, just fantastic. If you have Wingspan, I would probably get this one over the European one first, because those boards and the nectar itself just make the game so much more interesting and so much more fun. The European one is also a lot of fun, but if you can, I would get the Oceania one first. That brings us to number one. Number one, like I said earlier, I generally get rid of the boxes, but number one is going to be Marvel Champions, specifically the Ant-Man expansion and Rise of Red Skull. But everything they've released this year has been pretty fantastic, aside from a couple of missteps, particularly the Hulk Hero Pack was a bit of a letdown, but everything else has been pretty fantastic. Ant-Man, with its giant card and its size changing, you can move around and modify your character more than any character ever has, and that's just a lot of fun changing forms. The Rise of Red Skull offered 5 new villains, and that's pretty awesome. Marvel Champions has a thing where they just release hero pack after hero pack, which is great. I mean, I'm never going to say no to new heroes to play, new player cards, but they were lacking on villains for a long time. When this pack released, it almost doubled the amount of available villains that you could fight, which is fantastic for a customizable game like this. So even if you're not going to play the campaign, the amount of villains in this set alone are well worth the money. That being said, another amazing pack is the Kang the Conqueror pack. It adds a great new villain with new encounter sets that you can mix and match with everything. I would recommend that one as well. If you're going to buy anything this year, buy Rise of Red Skull, the Ant-Man pack, and Kang the Conqueror pack. They're fantastic additions. They add more variations to those villains' fights, and they are all scalable in difficulty. My favorite thing from this, from Marvel, from the Rise of Red Skull, is actually not Red Skull himself, it's Zola. So Zola is one of the most difficult characters that I've faced in this game. He is constantly spawning minions, and he himself has Retaliate, so he's able to deal a lot of damage back to you, even when you're just trying to do a little bit of chip damage here and there. It is really challenging, really fun, and you can scale the difficulty as needed. It also introduces Hawkeye and Spider-Woman. I really enjoy Hawkeye's playstyle. Spider-Woman, I'm still trying to figure her out, but I really enjoy this game in general. And the new villains that these packs introduce and the amazing system of transforming that the Ant-Man pack gives are well worth your time. That's my list of the top 10 expansions of 2020. What do you guys think? Please leave any ideas that you have, or any, if you disagree with me, if you have any of your favorite expansions that I didn't mention, please put them in the comments. But thank you so much for watching. Side Game Strong.